This week we are continuing our journey through Ecclesiastes, and if you don't have a Bible, we do have a Pew Bible right there for you. We also have a page number for you to join us in Ecclesiastes. We have made it to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and we're joining Solomon on his pursuit to find meaning under the sun, right? And he's having a hard time finding much meaning under the sun. And I think the point of this book is that apart from God, life under the sun will be vanity. But with God, life under the sun can be a place of true meaning, true import, eternal impact. And so we are looking to discover, along with Solomon, how we can have a life that is meaningful and not wasted. Not one filled with regret. And we believe that God is the source of all meaning, that He is the source of all goodness. And so we come open-handed to Him, begging Him to intercede for us. Let's start off by reading verses 1 through 7. I'm sorry, move one page over, chapter 4. He says, "Again I saw all the oppressed that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of the oppressed, and they had no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressions there were power, and there was no one to comfort them. And I thought the dead who already dead more fortunate than the living who are still alive. But better than both, he is he who has not yet been and has not the evil deeds that has not yet been and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. And I saw that all toil and all skill and work come from a man's envy of his neighbor. This also is vanity and striving after wind. The fool folds his hands and eats his own flesh. Better is a handful of quietness than 2 handsfuls of toil and starving after the wind. Again, I saw vanity under the sun, and one person who has no other, either son or brother, yet there is no end to all his toil, and his eyes are never satisfied with riches, so that he never asks, for whom am I toiling and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business." He's looking again at life under the sun, and he comes to this reality that the world is not perfect, that relationships are not perfect, that justice is not perfect. And he realizes something. He realizes that sin separates. You see that initially when sin comes into the garden, and it's been true ever since. That where there is sin, there is separation. Where there is sin, there is hurt. Where there is sin, there is a struggle. And he's demonstrating that in a world with sin, an unholy world, there is oppression and there's depression. That relationally, there's going to be struggles. And that we are going to be oppressed, sometimes by nations, sometimes by temptations, addictions, afflictions, rejection. And Solomon wants us to understand that there is a deep darkness, and the darkest place to be is alone. And he's saying that because of sin, there can be so much separation, so much darkness because of the oppression that someone may be under, that they find themselves utterly and completely alone. And that is just a devastating place. That's a scary place. And he kind of gives us a dangerous distortion of doing life alone. Where do I come to when I find myself all alone in the dark? What are some thoughts that might come into my mind? He said one of the thoughts that he had when he was in that place is this: I'd be better off dead. Contemplated leaving this dust ball called earth. Or this one, I wish I never had been born. He's saying both of these thoughts came into my head. And ultimately, I guess if you get underneath those two thoughts, what is it really saying? It's saying this: I have great regret. That I've gotten to a place where there is great regret in my life. And my life no longer has meaning. I've come to a place where there is an acknowledgement that my life is misery and I wish I never had to live it. Now, I hope that you've come here today and that's not your state. For some, in all honesty, you may have shown up here because exactly the fact of the matter is that is your state. You feel alone, full of regret. I think that in some ways this is the saddest portion of Ecclesiastes. And we all suffer sorrow. We all understand that there, after the fall, is going to be times of struggle. And that's why we teach here that there is godly sorrow. There is sorrow that James says, even though it's difficult and even though it's challenging, it has a purpose and it's helpful. And that we're to even count it joy, not in like, yay, this is fun, but understanding that God has a purpose and a plan for it. And certainly as we've been walking through this book, we've pointed that out. And we've encouraged each other that there is a time for sorrow, but God's at work. Not to lose heart, not to become angry or sullen, but to understand that God is redeeming, restoring, making us more like his son, and to see his good, life-giving help in godly sorrow. But then there is a godless sorrow. And that leads, hopefully, to repentance. And if not, Solomon's saying that it can lead us to suicidal thoughts. It can lead us to irrational longings. Suffering, oppression, real pain, real hurt, real betrayal. For many of us, these are just words. For many of us, we say, yeah, it's sad that people are going through these things. But for some, this is the reality of their life. They feel unbelievably lonely and alone. They are struggling to hold a relationship together. They've just gotten results from a doctor that is overwhelming news, and they're trying to process it. Someone here might be saying, I have this sin in me, and although I hate it, it continues to win, and I am losing hope and heart. I don't want to be haunted by it anymore. Someone may be here and say, here I am, full in middle age, and I have not yet found a suitable partner. And this isn't what I had planned. I'm just sad, really sad. Someone here might be saying, I've been waiting to have a little bundle of joy. A little child. But to this point, God has allowed us to be barren, and at times we've even had a miscarriage that I'm dealing with and carrying, and it's just so heavy and hard. Some are pointing back, as we talked about last week, to something that took place in your past, and you think that that's always going to leave an imprint in your future, and you feel less than and broken. This passage speaking to you with encouragement, I hope, brings about a little peace today. But I'm not going to be the pastor that lies to you and says, in one message, we're going to find all the answers and that Solomon's going to give them to us today. I'm not going to stand up here and say, here's 3 ways to happiness today, 3 easy, simple applications to find joy. I think it's a little bit more work, because what happens a lot of times is you hear a message like that and you go and do those 3 things and joy has not found you. And you say, what am I supposed to do with this? 7 ways to remove doubt. 7 ways to fix your relationship. What happens when you get through all of those steps and there's still struggle? We also just don't want to share simplistic remedies. Read your Bible, pray, show up at church, join a small group, everything's awesome. Solomon's saying foul on that. He's saying that's not true. He's saying there's a deepness, there's an aloneness that can come into your life that these things that you check off a box and say, I did them, are not automatically going to be switched around. And so I don't want to lie to you today, and I don't want this to become something trite and small. I want to be honest with you. We live in a fallen world. Brothers and sisters, it's hard. But Solomon wants you to know this: it's harder alone than it is together. And so we find solace and community and strength by being together, by not building up walls because we're afraid, not building up walls because we're hurt, but instead allowing them to be broken down so that we can join together in encouragement, in hope, in shedding light and God's love. And so although there are no easy answers in life at times, there is an ultimate answer. You are known by God. You're loved by God. And He has a plan for your life. We have a tendency to want to build up walls and begin a well-worn path of isolation when we're hurting. Sometimes when I'm encouraging someone that's going through depression, they're going to be honest with me and they're going to say, the last thing I want to do is be around people. And I say, I got that, but you know what you should do tomorrow? Get with people. Right? They will help. No, it'll be draining. It'll be difficult. No, don't build walls to protect your heart. Instead, with wisdom, invite people into your situation, into your life. I've been burned before. I am so sorry. Pray that God brings you the right individual. So we are motivated to either withdraw or we're motivated to use others to spring ahead. I'm going to use people or use the envy of competition to get above people, to climb the corporate ladder over them in my life. In verse 4, he talked about how envy is a part of this toil that will lead to loneliness. He says, then I saw that the toil and all skill and work comes from man's envy of his neighbor. This also is vanity and striving after wind. Envy. We strive to be greater than others. We realize that we run faster when we are running against someone. And so we're in competition, and we want to get ahead of them. And for some, this is intoxicating. We look at others, and we're not happy and how God is blessing them. Instead, we take it as a competition. I need to be better than them. I need to get one up on them. I need to climb the ladder equal to them. And envy is subtle and it's sneaky, but it comes into our lives. I shudder to think, but if I'm honest with myself, I have to be honest with you too here this morning, that there are probably times in my life where I secretly wished that someone didn't succeed. Where when something bad happened to that individual, I was like, I'm so sorry. Hope it dropped you down a peg, you know. Envy can cause us to bring about division. I've seen it in a church situation where an assistant pastor all of a sudden is envious of a lead pastor's role, and he begins to undermine the lead pastor. I want his role. So when the lead pastor preaches a clunker, he's like, woohoo! Makes a mistake? Yes. This is in the church. It's in your business. It's in our homes. Sibling rivalry. It took place as the first murder. Envy. It is something that we all have a propensity to try to just get a little bit above our neighbor. And so in your neighborhood, you're kind of disappointed when your neighbor paints their house, right? And you're like, now I got to paint my house. Can't be that guy in the neighborhood. In sports, coaches will talk about how it's hard to get a group of great athletes to work together and not to demand the ball or all the attention. 2 Corinthians 10:12 says this, not that we dare to classify or compare ourselves with some of those who are commending themselves, but when they measure themselves by one another and compare themselves with one another, they are without understanding. He's saying that it will not satisfy. That envy will always separate, it will divide, and in the end it will leave you all alone. You know, it's interesting when you think about what envy causes people to do. I've met businessmen that because of envy made unethical choices and ended up in really big trouble. Think about the story of Barry Bonds, a really great baseball player. Actually, if he never took a steroid, probably would have been the greatest baseball player that ever lived anyway. But he decided to take steroids, and he wouldn't come out and admit this, but the story and narrative goes that the reason why is because he became envious of all the attention that home run hitters were getting during that steroid age. In other words, it wasn't enough that he was just hitting for a great average, an unbelievable outfielder, able to go out there and be the best baseball player almost every single time he showed up on the field. He was envious of the fact that SportsCenter showed that Sammy Sosa hit 4 home runs that last game. And so he decided, you know what, I'll cheat. And here, one of the greatest baseball players of all time is not in the Hall of Fame. Envy makes us do things to get ahead, but in the end, they leave us alone, hurt, distraught. There's a term called conspicuous consumption. You know, it's really all about envy. And what is conspicuous consumption? It's It's this. You pick out clothes to wear, but you're not picking out clothes to wear just so they cover your body. You're picking out clothes to wear so that others notice what you're wearing. You pick out a car to drive, but you don't pick a car to drive just to get you from point A to point B. You pick a car to drive that says you have reached a status, a mile marker. Now, sometimes this can be driven just out of the fact that people want good quality. Other times it can be driven completely out of envy. I want to be in the spotlight. I want to be ahead. I want to be at the top. Can I be the focus of attention? And in some ways, what we buy, we are hoping projects an image of value. I have more value because I have more stuff. And that's why we live in a world as Americans that typically does one of two things. It's a people that idolize and demonize. We fall in love with those that have, and we idolize them. Or we demonize them. You have too much. Both are damning. Both are unhealthy. We need to instead count our blessings. We need to celebrate God's provision in our lives. And what Solomon is going to teach us as we read and look through this passage is this. We count our blessings better together. We do. Alone, we're very easily tempted to become envious. Alone, we're more tempted to look at what others have and become jealous. But when we get together, a lot of times someone's there to say, hey, you know what you have? You're adding to, you're bringing, I have blessings. And we're able to count our blessings better together. And that helps deflate some of the envy that might be creeping into our hearts. Are you sitting in envy today? It may be a lot deeper than someone has more than me. It might be I am envious of the position. I am envious of that couple. I am envious of whatever it might be. Solomon's saying the end of envy is sad, lonely, desperate. Verse 5 says that not only do we struggle with envy, but there's a fool, there's a shameful complacency that can come over us. The fool folds his hands and he eats his own flesh. And he's saying, basically there's this idea that some are motivated to be workaholics, some are motivated to go hard, and they might have even health issues and relational issues because of it, because envy drives them and pushes them. But then there's others that have this shameful complacency. They're like, life just gave me a bad hand, and it's not my fault, and I'm just done. And I'm just going to stop trying. I don't think it's my fault. I don't think it's my responsibility. These things happen to me, and I quit. I'm done. Or they turn to someone and say, you feed me, you take care of me, I'm going to become a codependent individual. And I'm just going to take and take and take and take and take. And here's what happens. After a while, that person who is not trusting in Christ, not developing in all the ways that Christ would want them to develop, and instead just looking to suck from other people, what happens? Pretty soon they get wise to it and they cut that person off. And then they're just looking for another giver, looking for another person to latch on to. Feed me, help me. They shift the burden of responsibility onto a wise person. Proverbs 6 talks about a sloth, an individual that does this, that folds his hands and wants everyone else to take care of him. You know, we have a lot of discussions even in our own country right now going on as far as socialism is concerned or something like that. And not to get it all into a political conversation here this morning, I don't think that necessarily would be prudent, but I will say this. An attitude of just giving someone something and not teaching them and growing them and developing them is a foolish attitude. It's not a biblical attitude. That as people, we should not just be like, serve me, feed me, take care of me, without looking to serve, take care of, and love others. We have a tendency in the culture that we live in right now to be told that we're a snowflake. No one's like me. I'm an individual. I'm special. And everyone is. You are created in the image of God, Image Dei. You are unique. However, you also have responsibilities. God gave us a responsibility and a dignity, not to be a sloth, but to work, to serve others. There's a world of it, and what not the Bible, but even psychologists are calling extended adolescence. Where mom and dads are continuing to take care of children fiscally, emotionally, intellectually, into their 30s and 40s. Solomon's saying, don't you understand that in the end, you're not helping? That we want to be making sure that we're developing, growing, and maturing people to love God, to love others, and to develop and grow so that they are dependent in that walk with the Lord on their own. And a foolish person, what they try to do is they try to shift the responsibility to a responsible person. And this passage is saying, be careful. Don't be an enabler. Because you're just going to enable them into loneliness and sadness. He also, in verse 6, is talking about better is a hand of quietness than two hands full of toil and striving after wind. He's saying, look, there is this unsatisfied individual that has two hands full of work, two hands full of toil, that he's a driven person, and he's always looking at the future, and he's looking past today. And he's a workaholic. And it's not necessarily an evil motive. And it's not always their fault that they have to work overextended hours or become overwhelmed or overburdened. But the fact of the matter is that if we live in a sustained way as a workaholic, as a two-fisted individual, that there's going to come a day where there's regrets. And this is no respecter of persons. It's a temptation for all of us. To be driven, to look at the future, to keep going. And he's saying what you need to have is a balance. You need to have one hand in the work life, one hand in the love, people, God, nurturing and strengthening those aspects. We want to make sure that we're balanced in the way that we are doing life. And there are a lot of pastors that need to hear this message. There's a lot of businessmen that need to hear this message. There's a lot of moms that need to hear this message, because we can all become very overwhelmed and overworked people. And he's saying there are many people that at the end of their life, they're saying, I did all of this and I made all of this, but I don't even have anyone that loves me to give it to. You know, it's his version of the cats in the cradle and the silver spoon song or something. One hand toil, but the other hand in relationship. The other hand growing. The other hand improving in quietness so that you can develop spiritually. If you are full two-handed into just work and go, you are on a goose chase with no goose because you will never find it what it is you're looking for. And so do you feel free to help someone in need? Or do you even recognize that there are people in need? No, I'm too busy. That's a problem. Do you take time to stay in the present and in the moment? Moms and dads, Deuteronomy 6, it talks about how in the minutia of life, you're always discipling your family. You're not too busy. You're not overlooking it. But instead you're saying, I see that there's a need and I'm going to be wise to that. Listen, I spent many years in student ministry and young adult ministry, and here's what I can tell you. There was not a single girl there that would say, I'm really, really mad at my dad today. And I'd say, why? And she'd say, because he makes me drive a Yugo or something, you know. Something that doesn't even exist anymore. He makes me drive a Datsun or whatever. You know, I'm really mad that I didn't have enough cool clothes. But I can tell you that there were plenty that struggle with life and validation, body validation. A lot of these different demons and struggles because their dad never poured into them. But I got them the designer jeans they wanted. They want you, Dad. They need you, Mom. And we need to understand that we can't have two fists into one area while we're neglecting the day thing right there that is in front of us that is monumental and important. And I want to make sure that my daughters understand that they can have an awesome and wonderful relationship with their Heavenly Father because they had a connection with their earthly father that makes that not such a stretch. My dad, when I was growing up, I struggled with dyslexia really terribly. And I was decent at athletics, but not good in school. And so what would happen in the beginning of every athletic season, I would be playing on a team, and then halfway through, especially in middle school, I would be told, your services are no longer needed, you have bad grades, go study. And he was crushed because he realized that all I got told was, no, you don't measure up. And the thing that I could measure up in, they took away. And God allowed him to have some flexibility in his schedule. But during those seasons, when I was not able to play sports, he made sure that he was able to come home from work early and we'd go fishing. We'd go hunting. We'd go watch a ball game. We'd play catch. We'd play one-on-one. And he cheated a lot. He's my best friend. He could have overlooked it, but he was in tune. And Solomon's saying, that's how you get to the end and not have regrets. That's how you get to the end of your life and you look around and say, why is no one here to say goodbye to me? Because you weren't there to say hello to them. And so he's saying there's this cycle that takes place, and we don't want to get so busy, so overwhelmed, so envious, so lazy that we miss out on these opportunities. Some of your parenting needs work. Don't be lazy. Some of your relationships need work. Don't be lazy. It says in a commentary that I read, something that I thought was good. It says, we are called to contentment and abundant life. We are not called to have nothing, but to be content with what we have. Work and purpose are gifts from God, but we need to be careful not to abuse these gifts. Proverbs 23:4, do not toil to acquire wealth. Be discerning enough to desist. Rest with enough. Don't strive for more. It will not lead to peace. The quietness can also be translated to tranquility, rest, or peace. This is God's desire for us, and it can sometimes come as a gift of allowing us to lower the bar, not God's commands, but in our unrealistic expectations and demand from this life and ourselves, where we can find this contentment. It's not going to be found going it alone, but it's going to be found in community. Community without the gospel is just broken people together. And so I hope Bible Baptist Church, we're more than a country club, right? We're not just a group of people that are here for each other. I hope your family isn't just a family that inhabits a home together and has love and care for each other. But I hope that there is an understanding that we also need to be infused with God as the cornerstone of all of this. That we need the Lord to be involved. And I think as we look at verse 9 and down, it begins to bring this into view. It says, 2 are better than 1 because they have good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken. He's saying that there is something that we all have, a need, an opening, a hole. And it is absolutely infinite. And only an infinite God is going to be able to fulfill that need, that hole, that place. It's not going to be your spouse alone. It's not going to be your church alone. It's not going to be your family alone. It's going to be your family and God. It's going to be your church and God. It's going to be your work and God. That's how we find full fulfillment. You can be as creative and as tender and sweet as you want as a husband or wife to your spouse, but if you do not have God as one of the ties that connect into that relationship, it's going to be found wanting. We realize that when it's talking about cords, that it is talking about work. And intimacy is going to require work. Any parents in the room? Good parenting requires work, right? Any people that are involved in work right now, if you just show up and say, hey, boss, I'm just here, you're not going to have that job very long because he's going to expect work. Any married people here today? Intimacy is going to require work. We don't stumble into I'm known and fully know. It's work. And when we add God into that intimacy, There's a quietness, there's a tranquility, there's a rest, there's a peace that is promised. There is an unbreakable blessing to gospel community. No one reads Robinson Crusoe or watches Castaway and say, boy, that's what I want in life. I want to be all alone on an island. Now, for a few hours, maybe even a day or so, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, right? But here's what I can tell you. Many of us are swimming to that island. We're swimming towards isolation. I just don't want to meet or care about or care for anyone else right now in my life. Solomon says, don't think like that. We are better together. We go from isolated men to integrated men in verse 9. And he's saying two are better than one. On a practical level, do we really believe this? Two are better than one? Why? Because two is harder than one. Let's face it. The reason why this is a challenge is because when there's two opinions, two approaches, right? Before I was married, I was the most wonderful person on earth. It was so easy to agree with me. We got along very well. And all of a sudden, I disagree entered into the conversation. It's like, what? I'm not used to this. We have expectations, we have opinions. In relationship, there's fireworks. In relationship, there's friction. Did you know that there are several different versions of what clean is? I found that out. There's Bachelor Clean, and then there's Cheryl Clean. I like to watch every channel at the same time. I think that's a great idea. Just figure out what's going on, and I'm clicking away. I've learned that not everyone enjoys that so much. I don't understand what the problem is. I realize that discipling children takes sanctification between a mom and a dad. Do you realize that something as simple as chewing can be brought to your attention? Sure, life spent alone could be easier, but it would not be fuller. It would not be. It would be devastatingly difficult. Staying at home on a Sunday morning, deciding not to get involved in a church family and the politics and challenges that come to doing church together, I get it, it's easier. I mean, sometimes I think we all would love to stay at Bedside Baptist and enjoy the message from Pastor Sheets. But Hebrews tells us that we shouldn't forsake this, that it's good, it's necessary. Is it easier? No. But it's right, it's helpful. You can stay at home, watch one of the Stanleys, flip on the Hymns and Scenery channel, and have no one disagree with you, and worship's going to be exactly the way that you want it to be. But in the end, you are not going to develop fully as a fully devoted follower of God without this body, without a body being part of your spiritual walk and life. We're created to need community. He designed us that way. And it's not good for us to be alone. So, it may be easier to do that, but it is not fuller. Together, verse 9 would tell us that we're more productive. Two are better than one because they have good reward for their toil. He's saying that we're able to have good reward, that there is a more productive life that comes from being in community. There's an increased revenue. That's actually what it's saying. Two heads are better than one. There's a sanctification that will take place when we are together. If you invest at being close as a family, there's going to be a reward to that, especially when Christ is the center of your worship. When we invest to be unified as a church, there's going to be a reward to that. God calls us as a church a body. He calls us a building. He calls us a family. He calls us a flock. All these things are not singular. He doesn't call us a block. He doesn't call us just a sheep. But as the church is concerned, we are not just a finger, but we are a body. You know, even Moses in Exodus 18 was chided for this. He decided that I'm just going to lead alone. I'm just going to be on my own, and I'm just going to lead well. And so as he was leading the children of Israel, he was beginning not to do such a great job. He was probably beginning to feel some of the physical effects of that challenge. And Jethro visits him and he says, don't you understand that you can't lead alone? You need 70 other men to lead with you. Moses, this isn't something for you to do by yourself. Many people have said this, it takes teamwork to make the dream work. And so he's saying that Christ and community brings stability into life. When we are together, we better protect each other. When we're together, we better care for one another. I was watching National Geographic, and I had a pack of wolves coming after a group of buffalo, a herd of buffalo. And it was so interesting because they had the little one, and the little one would run into the middle of all the big buffaloes, and the big buffaloes would just stand and turn at all these wolves and make sure that they couldn't get to the little ones. And really, that's a beautiful picture of why we need to be together, church. It's a beautiful picture of why a family needs to be united, because there is an evil one. There is a wolf. There is a lion that seeks to take us down, and we need God's beautiful picture of community to protect each other, to help us stand. The idea of, I got your back. If you're a military person, someone would tell you, I got your six. What does that mean? They got you covered behind. Out of community comes sharing. Out of community comes comfort. Out of community comes someone to serve and to be served by. Out of community comes protection. This is a struggle. Real true community, someone that is absolutely close to you, is a difficult thing. Especially for men. 4 in 10 men, if they're really honest, would say, I do not have a super close friend. Someone that I share my failures with. Someone that can walk up to me and say, hey, I'm just concerned, brother. I love you. But I see some stuff. He shares what is often communicated at a wedding, that there are 3 chords. 2 is a great plan until there comes a day where you're both miserable or both having a difficult time, and you need that foundation that is the worship of God in your marriage or in your church or in your life. We are weak. We are quickly broken on our own, but together We are strong, much stronger than on our own. Can I ask you a question? Let me tell you a story first. At our home for a period of time, we had a trampoline, and I'm not so sure it was the safest idea in the world, but we had one. And we had to have someone hold down the trampoline when the girls were jumping up and down, or the trampoline would flip. And so they're having a good time. They boing, and up they'd go, and then down they'd go, and up they'd go, and down they'd go. But if they went out on their own and they jumped on the trampoline and no one was there to hold down that trampoline, here's the deal. When they came down, it would just be a matter of time before the whole trampoline came down. Brothers and sisters, let me ask you a question. Who's holding your trampoline? There needs to be. It can't just be family. I think there should be a good tenor, and proximity matters, right? It can't just be someone that you Facebook far away. No, physically, someone had to be there holding the trampoline. Who is holding your trampoline? And you may be on the way up right now and be like, I'm good. I don't need anyone, but here's the deal. You're coming down. Do you have a network? Do you have a small group that's holding a trampoline? Do you have a network of friends that are helping hold the trampoline? Are you close enough as a family that you're holding a trampoline? But we need to make sure that this is a part of our lives, because when we are together, we're picked up when we fall. We're held up so that we don't fall. If you fall and you're alone, you die in a pit. If you fall in community, you're helped up. What did the prodigal son realize? Oh, I have 1 million Facebook friends. I have all this money. I'm popular. People are hanging around me. But when times got tough, it was him and a pig. And he remembered he had an ultimate friend, a loving father. I'm going back to him. Who's your friend? God is there. He always holds your trampoline, and he invites community around it to be there for you, to pick you up when you fall. Here's what I can tell you. My truest friends were the ones that when I made a fool of myself didn't make me feel like I did a permanent job, but made me feel as though I could be restored, redeemed, and loved. Yep, Bryan, that was an awful move. Let's get up. Let's go. Let's get on your feet. Let's run again. Colossians 1:17, and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Growth in the gospel doesn't lead to places of greater independence, but it leads to places of greater interdependence. We all have blind spots, just like in a car. And we need the body of Christ there to help us see our blind spots, to help, through God's grace, develop and grow us together. Why do so few of us have a relationship like this? You might say, Bryan, I've been here a long time, or this is my first time here. How do I get in community here? I see community happening, but I'm not a part of it. I'm not connected in community. Like, is there a secret handshake? Is there a special thing that I have to do? We want to make sure, first of all, that we're doing everything we can to let you know that you have an advocate for your family. If your family is struggling in community, we want to be there. We want to help see that strengthened. Secondly, we want everyone to feel a part of this local body. We want you to know that you are part of a community that loves you and cares about you. And if you feel like you're an outsider, we'll do whatever we can to give you opportunities and point you into direction for you to find that community that God has for you. And so what I'd love for you to do, at the end of our service here, we will have a benevolence offering that we take up when we have communion. And what we're going to do is at the end of our time together is there's a tie into our community. And we believe just like God has given us a triple cord of himself and a companion, and there's intimacy involved in that, and there's friendship involved in that. We want everyone to experience that here in relational, missional, transformational ways. And so there's just some different ways in which you could tie into our community. Go ahead and fill one of these out, throw it in the plate. We want to make sure that put your name on here, and we'll get back to you and help you tie into community here at Bible Baptist Church. Because we feel very strongly that everyone here needs to be involved in a triple cord. That you need to experience good, godly community in your life, in your marriage, in your family, in our church. And so would God give us the wisdom and direction to be able to do that well. Let's pray. Our Father, we thank you for your word. Lord, help us not to run down paths of envy. Lord, help us not to be slothful. Help us not to be workaholics, too busy. Father, would you allow us to experience the intimacy of that triple cord, that place of community where you reside. Lord, would each of us grow in this very important, strategic way for your glory and for our good. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.